Yomi is Sanhedrin Daf Tes Zayin, Sanhedrin 16. We're going to start on Tes Vav on Mabeis around 9 lines on the bottom at the two dots. And today's daf is dedicated for Shmir for Chayolim, Ratzal for the Shvuyim, and Yeshua for Am Yisrael on this Eis Tzara. Gemara tells us on today's daf Yomi that we adjudicate a tribe on a court of 71. Gemara says, Hi Shevet Achata B'mai. Well, what kind of mistake, what kind of sin has the tribe made that they have to go before a court of 71? If it was a tribe that desecrated the Shabbos, that can't be the case. But Bashar mitzvos mi polig. Torah draws a distinction between whether or not an individual sinned or community sinned when it comes to the sin of idolatry, as we'll learn in today's daf, with respect to an Ir Hanidachas, a city that where the majority of the people in the town committed the idolatry. Then instead of getting stoning, which you typically get for idolatry, you get sayef, beheading, and all the property in the town is destroyed. But in this case, where do we see that the Torah draws a distinction between a community and an individual as it relates to the prohibition of violating Shabbos? So therefore, the Gemara says, it must be that we're talking about idolatry, a tribe that committed idolatry. So we say that if the entire tribe committed idolatry, we view them as though they were Ir Hanidachas. If the majority of them in tribe committed idolatry, we view them like they're Ir Hanidachas. Come on, who's that like? Rabbi Oshaya, Rabbi Yonasan, the Tanya, we learned in the Brisa, Ad Kama Osin Ir Hanidachas. What makes this city Ir Hanidachas? Miyud Vad Kuf. If the city is from 10 until 100. Smaller than that, not a city. And larger than that is too big for a city. And that's the position of Rabbi Oshaya. Rabbi Yonasan says, Mikufad Ruba Shal Shevet, from 100 until the majority of the tribe, but not the entire tribe. I feel Rabbi Yonasan will come around Ruba of a cool, but even according to him, it's not the majority of the tribe. So therefore, how are we going to explain our sugya? What does it mean about a tribe that's judged before a Sanhedrin? So Amar Masna, we're on top of 16a. We're talking about here is a prince, the prince of each tribe. If he committed a sin, that if that prince committed a sin, which is typically speaking something that goes for a capital case, says Rashi, then and we'll see from the bottom of the Gemara that that's clear. And therefore, under those circumstances, he has to go before the Sanhedrin. Milo Amar Ravada Barava Koa Davar Gadol Yaviu Elach. Didn't Ravada Barava teach anything that's great they should bring to you, to Moshe Rabbeinu? Tvarav Shal Gadol, and Moshe Rabbeinu is like the Sanhedrin. So if it relates to a Nasi, you bring it to the Sanhedrin. Hainami Gadol. So this is a Gadol as a Sanhedrin. Second answer, Amar Rabbi Lazar Rabbi now Iske Nachos. Now, if we have like a dispute between the tribes as it relates to their inheritance. And so that those land disputes go before the Sanhedrin. Just like when the land of Israel was divided, it was divided up by the Sanhedrin. So too, you need a court of 71. Gemara says, well, wait. Just when, if that's the case, just like when all of Israel, when at the beginning of the division of the land of Israel was divided up with lots and the Urim V'Tumim, which was a special oracle attached to the Kohen Gadol, and all of Israel, so too you should require all three of those things in front of Kafeh, the lots, Urim V'Tumim, V'Kol Yisrael, and all of Israel. So we go back to the first approach, that it was the Nasi like Masa taught. Third approach is the approach of Ravina. Ravina says, we go back to the idea that it was this tribe that committed idolatry. We took a kashlach bedina deravim and daimin away. And your question was, should we judge them as like they're a city that's Ir Hanidachas? And the answer is in. Yes, we would judge them in front of a court of 71, afagav de katliman b'yachad, but we don't give them sayef, we give them skila as though they were individuals. So even though afagav de katliman b'yachad, bedina deravim dainin way, even though we adjudicate them in front of a court of even though we give them stoning, we adjudicate them in front of a court of 71. Milo Amar Rabbi Chama Bar Rabbi Yossi Amar Rabbi Oshaya Votzeita Sa'ishahu Oasa'ishahi. Then it's saying in the pasuk you should take out this man and this woman. Ish v'isha tamotzilu sha'arecha. A man and woman you take to a regular court. You don't bring out the if you have the whole city, you don't bring them to a regular court. Hachanami, how you doing? How's Boker Tov? Chanukah Sameach. Here also, Ish v'Isha Isha tamotzi l'sharecha. A man and woman you bring to the regular court. V'yatamotzi kol sheva kula sharecha. You don't bring the whole tribe to your gate to a regular court, but you bring them to the Sanhedrin. So we're in 16a, 4 lines before they get wide, and the Gemara has basically said, and what does it mean to that a tribe has to come before a Sanhedrin for judgment? So the Gemara gave 3 answers to that. One is that it refers to the Nasi who committed a capital offense. Second, tribes as it relates to an inheritance. And the third answer is it means that if the majority of the tribe committed idolatry, then even though they don't have the same laws that Yarni Dachas and that they would get beheading, they would still get the individual punishment of stoning. But that case, the majority of the tribe has to be adjudicated before the Sanhedrin and not before individual courts. And then the Gemara says, Lo is Navi HaSheker. A Navi Sheker, a false prophet, is also going to be judged in front of a court of 71. Menani Mili, what's the source for this idea? I'm Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina. Asya Hazada Hazada Mizake Mamre. We're going to learn it out from a rebellious elder. It says the word Yazid by a false prophet to commit this sin, and it also says by a rebellious elder if he does this intentionally. Asher Yaseb Zadon. Just like the rebellious elder violates a ruling of a court of 71, Afkan also here. So it must mean that the false prophet is judged before a court of 71. The Gemara says, but wait. The Gemara says, no, but by a rebellious elder, when it says the word that's not talking about the violation of the sin. That's referring to the rebellious elder being executed. And the rebellious elder is brought before a court of 23 to be executed, not a court of 71. So the Gzeir Shava should end up with the Navi going before a court of 23, not 71. Ela Amar Reish Lakish. So Reish Lakish says, I'll just read the Rashi. Katoa didei be'etzer mishlosha. The rebellious elder is executed for a court of 23. When it says you'll get up and you go to the place, that's Borah Ksiv. Shabon Lashoa Mayoro v'chozo ira, that they come to ask him how he will rule, and he goes back to his city. And if he continues to do his sin and he'll give that ruling, then he's going to be judged for a court of 23. So Zaki Mamre is not judged before a court of 71. He's only judged before a court of 23. So what's the source for the false prophet going before a court of 71? So the Gemara says, so we're going to do a different Gzeir Shava, a different attempt. It says the words davar from the pasuk about a rebellious elder. Vasita pi adavar asher yagidu chaminakoma asher yivchar Hashem. V'samtu Hashem k'chol asher yerucha. And that by the Zakei Mamre is referring to the fact that he has to follow the words of the Sanhedrin, and the word davar PR is by the false prophet. Gemara says, well, if that's the case, so other Zakei Mamre v'gamar zada zada mi navi sheker. So the Gemara says, but wait. The Gemara says the Zakei Mamre should go back and we should learn out by comparing to the Zakei Mamre to the Navi Sheker and say that the Zakei Mamre should have to go before a court of 23. Gemara says we're not going to do that. Why not? Because davar gamir azada lo gamir. Gzeir Shav is something you have to have a tradition about. We have a tradition that there's a Gzeir Shav on the words davar, but not on the words hazada. And the Kohen Gadol also goes before a court of 71. Well, let's Kohen Gadol. What's the source of the Kohen Gadol? Let's go before a court of 71. Amar Avada bar Ahava. That it says that all the matters of the Gadol should be brought to Moshe Rabbeinu. Dvar of Shal Gadol means the matters of the Gadol, i.e., if the Kohen Gadol committed a capital offense, it goes before court of 71. Meisvei Davar, also Davar Gadol, Davar Kasheh. Maybe when it says Davar Gadol, it means a difficult matter should come to motion, not the matter of the Kohen Gadol. Ta'omer Davar Kasheh, I know Dvar of Shal Gadol. Which is it? Is it a difficult matter or the matters waiting to Kohen Gadol? Shomer is a Davar Kasheh Yavino Moshe, or a Davar Kasheh Amor. Huda Amar. So when it says the matter, so when it says it's a Davar Kasheh Yavino Moshe, already Davar Kasheh Amor. So when it says the difficult matter should be brought to Moshe, it means to say that it refers to that pasuk is referring to a difficult matter. So to this matter is referring to the difficult matter and not the Kohen Gadol. So why are you saying Davar Gadol refers to the Kohen Gadol? It should refer to a difficult matter. Gemara says no. Ravada hu da'amar ke'aitan. Ravada that holds like the following Tana. The Tayim Davar Gadol, Davar of Shal Gadol. It refers to matters relating to Kohen Gadol. Atomer Davar of Shal Gadol and all Davar Kasher. Maybe it's a difficult matter. Shomer Davar Kasher, Davar Kasher Amor. Amani Mekayim Davar Gadol. It means Davarav Shal Gadol. I mean, it already says the Davar Kasher. So now it refers to the matter of the Kohen Gadol. Tana Trey Krai Lamoid. So according to the one who says Davar Kasher refers, Davar Gadol refers to difficult matter, and it says it twice. Why do we need two psukim? One is to tell us that there's the commandment, meaning to say the advice of Yisro was that the difficult matter should be brought to Moshe. And the second pasuk is telling us that Moshe accepted Yisro's words. So that's one is in Parshas Shemos, and hold on one second. Okay, hold on one second, and they're both there in Yisro, but they're two separate psukim. The Gemara says the Idach, and the second Tanu says that they're referring to two separate things. One is a difficult matter, what is the Kohen Gadol? In Kain Lichtov, O Gadol, Gadol, Kasheh, Kasheh. My Gadol, my Kasheh. Shema Minatarti, it's teaching us both things. By Rebbe Lezer, so now Rebbe Lezer says, okay, this idea that the Kohen Gadol has to go before the Sanhedrin for capital matters, what about if it's the ox of the Kohen Gadol, which typically speaking goes before a court of 23, an ox that kills if somebody goes before a court of 23. If it's the ox of the Kohen Gadol, does it have to go before the Sanhedrin as well? Shorosh Kohen Gadol b'tama. How much does the ox, how many judges does the ox go before? What do we say? Well, like just like the Kohen Gadol would go before a court of 71, or do we say like a general person and goes before a court of 23? From the fact that he's asking about the ox, it's clear that it's very simple, that it's very that it's very obvious to him the answer about money, meaning to say that the dini mamanos of the Kohen Gadol, you don't need a court of 71, but it's enough for 3 judges. So the Gemara says pshita. It's obvious, of course, the court of 71 is not going to get involved in simple civil matters of the Kohen Gadol. Because of Kol Davar Gadol, you might have thought Kol Davar Shal Gadol. I mean, the same thing, if there's a traffic accident, the Kohen Gadol has to go to the Sanhedrin. Kamashwa, no, he doesn't have to do that. Okay, so now it doesn't answer the question about the ox of the Kohen Gadol. And we don't go out to a discretionary war unless we have a court of 71. So the Gemara says, Minani Milu, what's the source? I'm Rabbi Avot, I'm Rakrabo, Fnei Elazar Kohen Yamod. It says about Yoshua, I'll have to stand before Elazar the Kohen. Yamod, V'fnei Elazar HaKohen Yamod, and I'll ask the Urim Tumim. So it means, when it says that in the pasuk, it says, who v'chol b'nei Yisrael ito, he and the whole community. Who that refers to Zamel, the king. Chol b'nei Yisrael ito, that refers to Zamashuach Muhammad, that refers to the one who's anointed to go out to battle, the Kohen HaMashuach. The Kohen does do Sanhedrin, so he has to stand before the Sanhedrin, and the Sanhedrin has the and so therefore he has to go for a court of 71 before going out to battle. Domo Sanhedrin to come maybe the Sanhedrin doesn't mean that we have to ask them, we have to go before a court of 71 before deciding to go out to battle. But maybe the Sanhedrin, the Gemara was the Pasuk was telling us that the Sanhedrin has to ask from the Urim Tumim. Meaning to say that the Sanhedrin has to ask from the Urim Tumim. Only the king and the Kohen Mashiach and the Sanhedrin could ask. The Gemara says, okay, Ella. So what's the source of the idea that before going out to battle you have to ask the Sanhedrin? There's an incident with David HaMelech, which also appears in the second daf in Shas, or back in Brachos at the very beginning. And this proves that David HaMelech asked the Sanhedrin before going out to a discretionary war. Milchemes mitzvah, we have no choice. An obligatory war, we have no choice, but a discretionary war. How so? David HaMelech had a harp hung above his bed. Once the middle of the night arrived, a northern wind would blow, and the harp would start to play on its own. David immediately jumped up and started studying Torah, even before the dawn arose. Once the dawn came, so the sages came to him. Your people, our master, our king, your people, they need to make a living. What are we going to do? He says, go support each other. They said this fistful is not enough to support the lion. And the pit cannot be filled up by what's inside it. You take out a pit, there's not enough to refill the pit from the earth. He says, go do a battle. Fight a battle, and that's how you'll make money. They went to They went to the Sanhedrin. You see, you need to go and ask the Sanhedrin before going out to battle. And they asked the Urim Tumim. Amar Rav Yosef, my kra. So Rav Yosef says, what's the pasuk that tells us that that was what happened? So he says the pasuk is V'achrei Achitofel. After Achitofel was Benayo ben Yoyada v'Aviatar v'Sar Tzavel Melch Yoav. And what does we learn from that? Achitofel Zayuetz, that was the advisor. Chaynu Omer Vatzas Achitofel Asher Yaat. And Benayo ben Yoyada, that refers to the Sanhedrin. And Aviatar Elu Urim Tumim. Chaynu Omer Benayo ben Yoyada Crazy Vala Placey. Lama Nikra Shimon Crazy Uplacey. Why were they called the Crazy or the Placey? Crazy Shekors and Divran, that they are precise with their words. So the Urim Tumim is called the Crazy Uplacey because their words were precise and their actions were wondrous. And after that, they went to battle with Yoav. What's the pasuk that we learn that David would waken from the harp, which would come from the northern wind? Because it says, Ura kavodi, Ura anevel v'chinora ir shachar. It says, awaken my glory, awaken the harp, I will awaken the dawn. Meaning to say, I'm not sleeping till the middle of the morning like the other kings, but rather the harp awakens me in the middle of the night, and then I will be the one who awakens the dawn. The dawn does not waken me, I awaken the dawn. And okay, next part is we add on to a city with a court of 71, to the city of Jerusalem with a court of 71. What's the source? Hashem showed Moshe the image of the Mishkan, and so you shall do. B'doros habayim, meaning saying future generations, you want to add on to the temple and add on to the courtyards, of the temple, you need to have a court of 71. So the Gemara says, Masav Rava kol hakelim she'asa Moshe mishichasa mekadshan mikan ve'elech avodasa mechan chasan ve'amai name of Chayin Tasu Doros Habayin. You say that everything has to be done exactly like Moshe Rabbeinu did it in the Mishkan, but it says in the Brayso, so all the utensils that Moshe made for the Mishkan, anointing them was what made them kodesh, was what made them holy. But from that point on, when we didn't have the anointing oil anymore. So what made them holy was when they started to be served in the temple, to be put into use. But why? Why don't we say future generations that you would need the anointing as well to make them holy? So the Gemara says, no, Shani Hasan, no, that case is different with respect to the utensils. Says you anoint them and make them holy. Osam, no, those utensils, b'mashicha, those utensils are with holiness, with anointing. But future generations are not with being anointed. It says the Gemara, maybe those generations at the time of Moshe were by being anointed. In future generations, you could do anointing or service. Amar Papa, Amar Kra, Asher Yishartu Bam Bakodesh. So no, it says that you should take the kli shares and you should use them in the temple. Means to say, since it says Asher Yishartu, in the future, we learn that we're talking about utensils that will be used for the future generations. That Kosav Tuam B'Sheres. The Torah says it's dependent upon your service. So why does it say Asher? Why does it say in the pasuk otam, meaning to say v'imshachem kadesh otam? What do we learn from that? If we didn't have the word avamino adoros b'mishicha avoda, in the future generations, you need both mishicha and avoda. And therefore, the Katsa Rachmana osam b'mishicha v'lo adoros b'mishicha. So those are with anointing, but future generations are not with anointing. We see from here the fundamental idea that the holiness comes in the future generations after time of Moshe Rabbeinu, not from anointing, but from service. Holiness comes from service. And then we said in the Mishnah, we only make Sanhedrios, the small courts of 23. They're appointed by the Bezdin of Shivim Vecha. They're appointed by the court of 71. No, and what's the source for this idea? Moshe appointed the smaller courts, and Moshe was equivalent to the court of 71. And so we learn from here that you only appoint the smaller courts on the basis of the court of 71. How do we know that there's an obligation to appoint judges for Israel? That you have to appoint shoftim titain. It says in the pasuk you have to appoint judges. Shotrim l'yisrael. How do we know you have to appoint officers? Shotrim titain. It says in the pasuk you should anoint officers, court officers, like policemen. Shoftim will call shevet v'shevet. How do we know that each tribe requires a judge? So the Gemara says, "Tamor shoftim l'shvatacha." Shotrim will call shevet v'shevet. How do we know each tribe requires a policeman, officers? Shoftim will call every year. How do we know every city requires a judge? Says the pasuk, "Tamomer shoftim l'sharecha." Shoftim will call every year. I don't know. Each tribe requires an officer. Tamomer, or each city requires an officer. Tamomer shoftim l'recha. Rabbi Yehuda Omer echad memuna al kulan. Meaning to say, no, each tribe doesn't need their own thing. One is on top of everyone. What's that? As it says, titein lacha, shenemar titein lacha, in the singular, meaning to say that there's one court that's on top of everyone. Some say that this is not a source for the Sanhedrin Gadol being on top, but that this is some Rishonim say that this is a source for the idea that there should be one person on top of Mufa, like we saw earlier in our track, that there would be one person on top of the Sanhedrin, like a Rosh Sanhedrin. There's a mitzvah for each tribe to judge its own tribe. How do you make an ir anidachas? Remember, we said earlier, what's an ir anidachas? That's a city where the majority of the people worship idolatry. Then typically, if you worship idolatry, you would be killed by stoning. But in the case where the majority of the city worship idolatry, then all those people are killed by beheading, and all the property in the town is destroyed forever. So Menoni Mili, what's the source for the idea that the Ir Nidach goes before a court of 71? Amar B'chia Bar Yosef, Amar B'shai, Amar Kra, Otzeitza, Asa Isha, Hu, Asa Isha, He. Ish V'Isha, Tamotzi L'Sharecha, a man or a woman who commit idolatry, you bring to your gates. V'Atamotzi Kol Yerkua, you don't bring the whole city to your gates, L'Sharecha, but you bring them to the Sanhedrin. Enos in Ir Nidachas Basapar, you don't make an Ir Nidachas on a border town, my time. On Mikir Becha, Amar Rachmana, below Safar. It says that the wicked people are in your midst, meaning to say not on the border, in your midst. Below Shalosh, you don't make an Ir Nidachas of 3 cities, but only 1 or 2, meaning to say there can never be 3 Are Nidachas ever in the land of Israel in history. There can only be 1 or 2. What you could do, you could do 1 or 2. In the plural, so it'll be 1 or 2. It says in the Brisa, 1 city, 1 and not 3. Maybe it means only maybe it means 1 and not 2. It means 1 and not 3. Now we have an important teaching. Zimnin, they're all important, but this is very interesting. Zimnin Amar Rav, Bebezdin Echad Hu De'enos. Rav, sometimes Rav said, in 1 court you can't make more than 2 Arim that are Nidachos. In 1 city you can't do it. In 1 court you can't do it. But if you have 2 or 3 courts, the 2 or 3 courts, each one of them can make 2 Nidachos. And then it's not a problem. I mean, say you could have a lot of Arim Nidachos, but that would become from multiple courts. And sometimes Rav said, you can never, ever, ever have more than 2 or 3, more than 2 Ari Nidachos, even from multiple courts. Meaning in history, there can only be a maximum of 2. My time in the Rav, Mishum Karcha, because we're worried that the land of Israel will become desolate, because they'll have all these Arim Nidachos. And so therefore, to make sure, because the city can't be used anymore. When do we say you can't make 3 Arim Nidachos if it's in 1 place? I mean 3 in the Galilee or 3 in Judah. If it's in 2 or 3 places, you could do it. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Ein Osim Mishum Karcha. He says no, even in 2 places you don't do it because it's Karcha. It's too desolate. Tanya Kavasid Rabbi Yochanan. We have a price like Rabbi Yochanan. Ein Osim Shalosh Ayaros Menudachos Beret Yisrael. He says you don't make an 3 Ari Nidachos in the land of Israel of Osin, but you can make them in Shtaim. You can make them in 2 places. You can go in Achas Yehuda and Achas Begali. Aval Shtaim Yehuda or Shtaim Begali or Ein Osin. You don't make 2 in Judah or 2 in the Galilee. Usmuchu Asapar, and next to the border, I feel Achas Ein Osin. You can't even do 1 next to the border. My time Hashem Yishmu Nachrim V'Yachrivu Eretz Yisrael. Well, maybe the nations will hear what's going on, and they'll realize that there is an empty place, nobody's living there. It'll be a security breach, and they'll come and destroy Israel. Or you could say maybe the nations of the world will hear that we're an idolatrous nation. They'll realize we're not strong. Mara says, well, we have a different source for that. There's another reason, like we said above, you can't do it on the border because it says Mikir Becha, not because there's going to be a security breach. Yeah, that's the same thing. Rabbi Shimon, he did Darish time. This is Rabbi Shimon who says, no, this is what the pasuk means when it says you can't do it. When it says Mikir Becha, means don't do it on your border because it'll be a security breach. In point of fact, the Gemara later on in Ben Sora Mora is going to say that there's that the majority opinion is that there never was such an Ir Nidachas at all. But here we're saying even if there would have been, there could have only been a maximum of 2 in human history. Okay, so we'll stop here, and God willing, we'll go upstairs to daven.